GM. Today's lesson is a bit of a different one. I think I've touched on this in the past, but I don't think I have directly spoken about depression, my experience with it, what I think it actually is and what it leads from, and also the feeling of either suicidal thoughts or a feeling like life is just not worth living. And those two things are different, by the way. A feeling of life not being worth living, or that life is just, is this all there is? Is that it? The sort of feeling like things won't get better. That was the feeling that I had when I was younger, much younger, and I was depressed. I've never contemplated suicide personally because of my religious beliefs. But I definitely felt like, oh, so this is it. Life's just going to keep revolving around and it's going to be this. Every day I wake up, I feel like shit. I feel powerless. I feel weak. I feel low. I don't feel like I've got anything to look forward to, any respect. And, you know, this happened to me when I was probably 17. And I've traced it. I've talked about this on a previous lesson, so you guys will know this if you've listened. But I traced it to the fact that I had no direction. So the first thing, especially for men, young men, or men of any age, if you don't have a mission, if you don't have a mountain to climb, if you don't have direction, you're going to be more inclined to feel depressed. And depression is not real. I agree with that, with what Tate says. You do not get afflicted. You don't catch depression and then just have it incurably. Some people can have an actual mental disorder. You might have bipolar or something like that. That's very real. But the vast majority of what people say is, I used to feel good, now I feel terrible, and I feel like I can never get out of it. That is something that's entirely in your control to change. Because I did it. I had a great upbringing, I had a great family life, I had a great childhood. And then I left school. I dropped out, to be specific. I dropped out because I didn't want to continue finishing school. I had like a year left. And I wanted to go off and do my own thing and make millions of dollars and start a business. And I tried all that, and then the business didn't work out. And so I ended up just back working a regular job, like a McDonald's job, literally McDonald's. And all my friends were still in school. And even though I didn't want to go to university, or I thought I didn't at that time, I saw all my friends either on one side working in trades, so they had left school with the intention of becoming an electrician or working in construction or whatever, learning an actual skill. Or there was my other friends, which I had aligned with originally, where we're going to stay on in school, we're going to finish school, we're going to go to university. And they were all still doing that. So they all were in school, heading towards university. My other friends were all out working, learning skills. And there was me, felt like the only person in the world who had neither. I wasn't on a path to university, and I wasn't on a path to having a tangible physical skill, a trade skill. I was just working in fucking McDonald's. Who wouldn't be depressed? But it compounded to the point where months and months and months went by, and every single day just felt like shit. Terrible. Just nothing to look forward to. Wake up in the morning. I remember specifically that for a couple of seconds after I'd wake up, I would feel good as I was coming out of my dream. As I was waking up, I would feel good for a couple of seconds. And as soon as I was awake enough to remember that I was depressed, immediately, that was it. Back to the shit feelings, and that was it all day until I went to sleep. That part was actually the part that pulled me out of it. When I realized later on, as I started to get some positive things happening in my life, I realized there was nothing wrong with me. Those 2 seconds proved it. Those 2 seconds in the morning proved that there was nothing wrong. It was purely in my head. It was only once I decided to be depressed again that I would be depressed. Do you understand? I woke up when I was still so tired and my brain was foggy. I felt fine. I felt that normal, nice feeling you do when you're coming out of a deep sleep, until I got into the moment and realized, oh, I should feel depressed again. Boom, back into it. So it's 100% a conscious choice. You're choosing. Again, unless it's something physical, like unless it's something medical, which I'm going to assume you know, if this lesson rings true to you, you've probably already been to a doctor, so you probably know you're not bipolar, you're not actually schizophrenic, you're not actually clinically mentally ill or have mental health issues. And if someone has told you, if you've been to a counsellor, you've been to a doctor and they've told you have depression, you have to delete that label from your brain yourself. Because all the counsellor did for me, and I went to counselling, I was like 17, spoke to somebody, spoke to a psychologist or whatever, and all I found, personally, it's just me, personally, I just found that I was going in and focusing on the problem for an hour, and then I just felt worse. And they talk about you do CBT, cognitive behavioral therapy, and there's all these other things and blah, blah, blah. I find it was like, when you've got an injury and you're hurt, you've hurt your leg, and you go and talk about it and you think about it and you feel it so much that all you feel is that injury, and that's how it becomes a chronic injury. I've had that in the past where I've had a sore back, and then what's actually quite interesting is I have a recurring bit of sciatica in my back and leg from an old injury. And a few weeks ago when I dislocated my ankle, for about 2 weeks, I had no sciatica, zero, because the pain in my ankle was preoccupying my mind. And towards the end of the pain, when the pain was really subsiding in my ankle, I noticed the sciatica slowly coming back. And yet it was not there. And I mean it wasn't. There was no feeling of pain in my lower back for those 2 weeks when my ankle was more painful. My brain could only focus on one thing at a time. And I find it's very much the same with the therapy or counselors or whatever. It's you go in and they make you focus on this thing, which just perpetuates it. And then they tell you, yes, you are depressed. Don't worry. We'll work through it and blah, blah, blah. And they want to give you pills and all this shit. Look, at the end of the day, it's your life. You have to take control of it. Only you can fix it. And a few things for me that I traced it back to was the sudden change. I had an identity. It was an identity crisis. I didn't know who I was. I had an identity before, which was a student, along with all my fellow students. I then decided to not do that. And whenever the business thing didn't work out, and I said, okay, I'll just work here for McDonald's for a while and then I'll get a new one. But in that period, I suddenly had no identity. I was 17, not a student, not learning something, not a trade, not running a business. I was a 17-year-old guy working a minimum wage job. And I did not know how to get out of that, and it ended up becoming a negative spiral. So you have to create your own identity. That's why I say to go and do something very, very difficult. If you're feeling depressed, set a really high bar, go and learn a very difficult skill, go and do sales, go and do something physical, training, sports, whatever it is. Set yourself a big goal to go and achieve. It's only when you're on a path, it's only when you have a mission that you're going to feel fulfilled. And fulfillment is the direct opposite of depression. Depression is a lack, right? You have a lack of fulfillment in your life. You feel something empty. Fulfillment comes from doing something very difficult. Always. The best things always come on the other side of difficulty. Also, if you're feeling depressed or down, understand that just like a crypto chart or any chart, it's always darkest before the dawn, and at the very, very, very bottom, that's where you feel the worst. But at that certain point, it can only go up, and like everything in life, it is cyclical, and you will return to feeling good again, better than you could ever imagine. So don't make any rash decisions, ever. Never. Never quit. Other things, get your testosterone checked if you're a man. Don't care what age you are. I don't know how much, I don't have the numbers, and I'm not a doctor, but I've researched this endlessly. A huge percentage of depression in men is from low testosterone. Go and get checked. It costs very, very little. It's free in most countries if you go to your doctor. Get your hormones checked. I don't care if you're 17. Some people have thyroid issues and hormone issues, endocrine system issues, even when they're young. Or if you're in your 30s or 40s, absolutely, that's exactly when it could be dropping. Super easy fix. It could just be that. And the thing that gives you the drive, the motivation, the desire to conquer the world is testosterone. That's the base essence of a man. If that's depleted, you're not going to feel like conquering. You're going to feel slow and small and weak and powerless. Genuinely, I mean this. If you feel that way, go and get checked. Because it wasn't for me. I never got checked, so I don't know. But one of the things, along with getting out of the shitty job, and I actually went back into school to go to university. So then I was back in a flow of, here's my identity, I'm a student again, I'm pushing towards university, now I know what I want to do, I want to go and do business, all this kind of stuff. But also I started training. I started weight training at that time, which would have had a direct effect as I started to get bigger and stronger. And I was eating more, and I was eating lots more meat, and my testosterone was definitely rising, and I definitely felt better. So there's 100% a correlation there. Make sure you get that checked if you also feel that you feel down. If you feel depressed and you don't know why, check your hormones. And if it's not that, then you have to look into your path. So if it's not about not knowing who you are, an identity crisis, if it's not a hormonal thing, then the only other explanation can be that your situation, your environment is wrong and your expectations are wrong. This is the last thing I'll talk about. If you say, I feel like shit, I want you to ask yourself, but what does feeling good look like? A lot of the time, it's just a perspective issue. People think that there's some kind of utopian feeling where you always feel amazing. Tate talks about this, that you're always happy. The baseline is not to be happy. It's not about being happy. If you can feel happy, that's amazing, but you're not going to feel happy all the time. I think a lot of times when people are depressed and they say, I feel like shit, or I feel like a piece of shit, or I feel terrible, do you actually know what you're comparing it to? What do you consider to be not a piece of shit? You say, I have low self-worth, right? I feel low as a man. Okay, but what do you see as the highest form of being a man? What is that supposed to feel like? Because odds are you have an unrealistic expectation of what this higher level person is supposed to be. And actually, when you boil down into your own approach and your own life and your own personality, you are actually very good at what you do. You're doing things right. You're a good father. You're a good brother. You're a good husband. You're a good businessman. You're good at work. You're good in your career, whatever it is. Most people are actually doing really well. They just think, oh, everything should feel massively euphoric all the time. No, it shouldn't. That's not life. Life is about ups and downs, and you need to have that perspective too. So think of all those things I've said. Implement any of them that make sense. If you're young, understand you need a mission. And if you're feeling lost, it's probably because you're not sure of who you are. If you're older, the exact same thing applies, because you might have had a mission in your 20s and maybe now in your 30s you're a little bit unsure. Or you maybe have recently had kids, and even though that's the best thing about this entire life, you probably feel a little bit lost as well because it's still a change. Try and trace back. If you've had major change recently, that can be a trigger for these things. And just understand that you have to take back control of your life.